Thank you. Mr. Soto?
Good afternoon, Council. I agree. I second what the previous gentleman talked about in terms of definitions. But rather than equity, what I would like to see is justice. Justice needs to happen in this situation. We can't debate about this anymore. This book I study every single day. I'm in The Devil in Silicon Valley by Stephen Peaty. And we haven't even scratched the surface of what justice looks like. This city allowed for pesticides to be sprayed on my ancestors. My grandmother, my father, my mother, and 7 tias were relegated, marginalized, discriminated against, and relegated to the east side of San Jose and Sal Si Puedes. Well, you know what? That means get out if you can. Well, guess what? They did get out. And that's why I'm here redeeming what it is that they could not for themselves. So before we get into what equity means and using these very euphemistic terms that don't have any real actual root in what happened, I would suggest everybody on this council first look at the documentary entitled Dolores. It's on PBS and it's very simple. You just go on PBS and watch it. And then within that context, using that as a framework to guide your decisions in terms of how you define what that means, use that as a guide. We haven't talked about the racist policies of the redlining that happened, that concentrated wealth in Willow Glen. We haven't even talked about that. That needs to be put on the table, because what happened as a result of that is that the average age of the homeless person on the streets now is 50. So that means that that person normally would have inherited wealth from their parents had they had the opportunity to accumulate it. But because of these racist whiteification, not gentrification, it was whiteification of Willow Glen and Rose Garden, that it deprived Mexicans of the ability to generate that ancestral wealth that they could have possibly passed down to the next generation. So like I said, as a citizen of this city that has suffered under those policies, I'm looking for justice, not equity.
Thank you. Mr. Soto, don't go anywhere. We're going to call you up in just a moment. Just on item 2.1, is there a motion? Okay, let's vote on item 2.1. Then item 2.9, you also wanted to speak on this item.
Yes, it's about, I'm not sure if I really understand it correctly, but it's somehow another stated that it was a renaming initiative. I'm not sure if I'm quite sure on that, but my mother taught at Gardner. She taught at Gardner, she taught at Washington, and she taught at Grant Elementary. And so, you know, that is the horseshoe. It has been commonly acknowledged as the horseshoe. And like I said, we haven't even come to a point as a collective, as a city, to come to terms with the injustices that that particular neighborhood has experienced. And I'll give you an example. The homes on the south side of the tracks have been given historical landmark status, which means they are going to be protected from the light rail, from the high-speed rail coming through. The homes on the south side of the tracks, which is all the horseshoe area, those are going to be demolished. And this council is lying. They are flat out lying to the people. Okay, because the horseshoe and all of those streets that are alongside of that, it's going to be gone because you're going to have 4 tracks that are going to have to go through there. Okay, and nobody's being honest about that. Nobody's putting that on the table. And so we want to get into these issues where we're going to rename that area, and this city as a whole has not even come to terms with the racist policies that created that area in the first place. And so, you know, just until we get to a point to where we can talk about race, we can talk about the historical injustices that Mexicans have experienced ever since Manifest Destiny. Ever since Manifest Destiny happened in this, we just barely grappled with Peter Burnett being changed. Peter Burnett was the most racist governor that this state has ever had. He was, so was Stanford. Leland Stanford was part of the Chinese Exclusionary Act.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. I believe Councilmember Davis